Hello and welcome to my craft channel, Susie Makes. My craft channel is all about crafts, taking you through a variety of crafts, mainly at beginner level. I have covered crochet and started covering cross stitch, and today is about knitting, and I'm going to show you how to cast on using the thumb method. Now, I've been knitting since I was 5, and I have never found a cast on method better than the thumb method personally, so it's the one I use all the time unless I want a more rigid cast on. You see this piece has been knitted using the thumb method, and you have quite a nice springy edge there where I cast on. So unless I want a more taut edge on my knitting, then the thumb method is the one I go to every time. So that's what I'm showing you today. You will need a pair of knitting needles and some yarn. I shall move that piece just out of the way for now. And let's just move the camera slightly closer. Now, to cast on using the thumb method, you need to leave a length of yarn that will be enough to cast on the number of stitches you require. Now, I'm just going to cast on 10, so I would suggest for 10 stitches and a tail long enough to perhaps do some sewing up at the end. I would suggest you leave around about 20 inches of a tail. And then start about 20 inches in from the beginning of your ball of yarn. Now, the thumb method is basically getting used to just wrapping the yarn around your thumb. And I do this by holding it straight like this, hooking my thumb over the yarn and bringing it round. You can see the working yarn, the one that leads to the ball, is on the top, and the tail, the 20-inch tail that I have left, is sitting on the bottom or behind. Now, I hold on to these two strands and I work into the loop that is sitting around my thumb. I'll show you that once more. So it really is getting used to the thumb action when you cast on thumb method. So you just hold a piece of the yarn taut like so, hook your thumb over it and come round to form a loop on your thumb. So your working yarn that leads to your ball of yarn is at the front, crossed over, and the tail end of your yarn falls down the back. You keep hold of those two and you work into the loop that sits on your thumb. So you get your one knitting needle to start with, put it into the loop, and yarn round the needle. You pull your needle through. Once you see that stitch forming, you let go of the loop, holding on to the tail of yarn, and you pull until that fits snug but not tight against your needle. So there, you've created your first stitch. You've cast on stitch 1, and you just keep doing that until you have as many stitches as you want. So hook your yarn, thumb over your tail end of yarn and bring round. You see now the working yarn leads to the first stitch, and the rest of the working yarn is beyond that. And the tail end of the yarn still falls to the back. You have the loop around your thumb, so you put your needle into the loop, your yarn around the needle, yarn under, You pull the loop off your thumb, hook it over the needle like so, and then pull. There, you've cast on 2 stitches. Again, hook your thumb over the yarn. It's hard to see that bit that gets hidden by my hand when I turn. Let's see if I can do it so that you can see a bit more. It's not so easy. You hook your thumb over the yarn and your thumb is going, that's it, under like so. So your tail end of your yarn sits behind the one at the front, the straight one at the front. You put your needle into the loop on your thumb, yarn under and round the needle, pull the needle through. When you see that loop, third stitch beginning to form, you let go of the loop and pull the tail. Once more, there you go. Thumb over the hook, I crochet as well, slip of the tongue. Thumb over the yarn, forming the loop, tail sits down the back of this horizontal yarn that leads straight to your needle where your stitches are forming. You push your needle into the loop on your thumb, yarn under the needle and over. Once you see that 4th stitch appearing, you push your loop over the tip of the needle like so and pull the tail end of the yarn until you see you've got a nice even ridge forming there. And again, thumb hook over the yarn, form the loop on your thumb, needle into the loop, yarn under the needle and round. Once you see that next stitch forming, push the loop over the tip of the needle and pull the tail. As I said, I'm going to cast on 10 stitches there. I've done 5, so we're halfway there. Hook the yarn over, hook your thumb over the yarn, form the loop, hold on to the tail, which the tail end of the yarn sits to the back of your working yarn, needle into the loop, yarn under, round. As soon as you see that next stitch forming, push the loop over the tip of your needle and pull the tail end until it sits snugly. You don't want it too tight. You want the stitches to be able to slide with ease. If it's too tight, it will be difficult to knit. So there's 6. 7. As you get used to it, you'll be able to speed up. 8. 9. 10. There. There you have, just check that, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, yep. 10 stitches cast on thumb method. And that is all there is to it. So whenever you want to take up knitting and you first cast on, not only do I find this a nice flexible cast on method, as in, bring that other one back in that I showed you that I had knitted earlier. You get that nice flexible springy edge, but it also looks nice and neat. When there are other ways of casting on, I'm used to cast on using the 2 needle method, and I found that my edging looked quite uneven. and normally if you use the 2 needle method of cast on, you have to do the first row into the knit into the back of the stitches, because otherwise it can look quite loopy. Well, I always find mine managed to look loopy anyway, so I was very pleased to find this method of cast on. It's also very handy cast on if you're going to be knitting rib, as you would normally find on cuffs or at the bottom of a garment, because you get that nice springy texture and that give that you need when you're putting a jumper on, or when you want sleeve cuffs to fit snugly around your wrists. So there we have our first 10 stitches cast on. You do still have a bit of a tail here. Always found it handy to just hold on to those, because whatever you're knitting, at some point you may have to do some sewing up, and it can be handy for that. If you just cut it off, then your knitting will unravel, so even if you don't use it for sewing up, you will sew your ends in at some point, usually at the end of your knitting. So there we have it. If you enjoy my videos, please do think about subscribing, so that you don't miss future ones. There will be, as I say, a variety of crafts coming up, and it's lovely to have you here. And on some of the programs as well, you will find free pattern giveaways too. So thank you for stopping by.